Hello and welcome to what I watched this month in December 2023. Yes, I know I'm copying Carsten Runquist, but I don't know. It's just something I want to do right now, and other people have done it already, so why not? And no, I'm not just admitting to it because I don't want people calling me a plagiarist. I would have done it anyway. So I started off this month with a first watch of Dick Tracy starring Warren Beatty, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this movie. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It's just a lot of pulpy fun, there's not much to it, but I really enjoyed it. 8 out of 10. Then I watched Godzilla Minus One in IMAX. And yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I don't think it's the greatest movie of the year, or even the greatest Godzilla movie. I know a lot of other people think that, but I still think this is a really good movie. It strikes good balance in the human drama and monster action. I got a lot of Spielberg influence from this. It's like Jaws, but times 1,000 in scale. So yeah, 8 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time James Wan's Death Sentence. And I enjoyed this a lot too. It's a lot more self-aware than a lot of other revenge movies about how revenge really only brings misery, and it's sort of a conservative fantasy. Although I don't think it goes far enough in that. Still, this is a very simple, well-made revenge movie, and I think if you like revenge movies or like action movies, you'll enjoy this a lot. 7.5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time My Neighbor Totoro, and I really don't have a lot to say about this movie. It's really simple, really cute, it looks beautiful obviously. 8 out of 10, maybe 7.5, but I'll give it an 8. Then I rewatched the ultimate cut of Zack Snyder's Watchmen, and this movie has just grown on me more and more over time. I really, really like this movie. It's just really sleek and well made, and despite the heavy subject matter, it's a lot of fun at points. So yeah, I think this is by far Zack Snyder's best movie, 9 out of 10. Then I watched both Rob Zombie's director's cuts for Halloween and Halloween 2. Halloween 1 is pretty good in the first half, and then it just slowly devolves into schlock and just a shot-for-shot remake of Halloween, but not as good. And Halloween 2, a lot of people really love this movie. I didn't really love it, but there's a lot to appreciate. I think it is better than Halloween 1, and it's a lot more meaner and crueler, and a lot more realistic in its depiction of grief and trauma. But ultimately, the middle portion of that movie dips in quality a lot. I'll give Halloween 1 a 4.5 out of 10, and Halloween 2 a 6.5 out of 10. Then I watched Insidious Chapter 2, having watched Insidious Chapter 1 for the first time early this year. And yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Kind of maybe transphobic, although it tries to acknowledge this in a way. I don't know, I can't really speak on that. But yeah, it was alright. 6 out of 10. Then I watched The Conjuring 2, and I really enjoyed it. It's not amazing, but it's a pretty well-made horror movie, and there are a lot of fun scares. James Wan's directing style is just on full display here. There's nothing subtle in this movie, but I quite enjoyed it and thought it was better than the first one. 7 out of 10. Then I rewatched The Abyss in cinemas, and I think this might be James Cameron's second best movie. It's not as good as Terminator 2, but it's really damn good. It's just a really fun and intense and sometimes funny thrill ride. Seeing it in cinemas with a bunch of people who haven't seen it was an incredible experience, and I really loved it. 9.5 out of 10. Then I watched Next Goal Wins in cinemas. And yeah, I didn't really love it. It's pretty flat looking, it looks like a commercial. Some of the jokes land, some don't. It's just not great. 5.5 out of 10. Then I watched Bottoms in cinemas, and I really liked it. It's one of the best comedies I've seen in years. It's so much fun, and it's a shame that comedy movies aren't really a thing anymore. I think if this came out a decade ago, it would have done really well. But as it stands, it's great and I recommend everyone go see it. 8, maybe even 8.5 out of 10. Then I saw Silent Night in cinemas, a new film by John Woo, and it's really not good. It's the worst movie I've seen so far this year, and yeah, I just did not enjoy it at all. It's very conservative. I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it racist, like some other people have, but there's still a lot of clear conservative messaging in this movie. And for a John Woo movie, the action is not very good. It's fine by regular movie standards, but by John Woo standards, not so much. It's just really shallow and just not very enjoyable. Watch Death Sentence instead. 3.5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Eyes Wide Shut in 35mm, and I loved it. Like most Kubrick movies, I don't think I fully understood it on first watch, but I really love this, and I can't say that for a lot of other Kubrick movies on first watch. I didn't really connect to 2001: A Space Odyssey on first watch, but obviously on rewatches I appreciate that movie way more. But this I instantly connected to and I instantly loved. It's at times hilarious, at times horrifying, and at 2.5 hours the runtime just flies by. This is already maybe my favorite Kubrick movie, which I know is kind of controversial. But yeah, I just loved it so much, and I look forward to rewatching it every Christmas. For me, it's gotta be a 10 out of 10. Then I watched in cinemas Tokyo Godfathers in a Japanese presentation. I also watched from director Satoshi Kon Perfect Blue earlier this year, and I really loved it. And this I didn't love quite as much, but I still quite enjoyed it. It's basically the plot of Ice Age. I think the tone was a bit inconsistent for me, and some of the comedy didn't really land, but this is really heartfelt, and I got invested in the characters, and I quite enjoyed it. Maybe upon rewatch I'll appreciate this movie way more, but as it stands now, 7, maybe 7.5 out of 10. Then I watched The Boy and the Heron in IMAX. English presentation as well, and I really liked it. I can't really say that I fully comprehended what was going on, but still, it's a Hayao Miyazaki movie. It looks absolutely beautiful, because of course it does, and I was invested in the characters, and I just enjoyed watching it. I don't really have much to say about this movie. 8 out of 10 is where I stand on it for now. Then I got COVID and just watched a bunch of movies at home. First off, starting with Team America World Police. And, where's Finn? A lot of jokes are really dated. I don't mean just like, oh, they offended me. I just mean, they reference things that were relevant at the time, but just no one cares about anymore, like the movie Pearl Harbor. I mean, even at the time, for 2004, that movie came out in 2001, like, having a song about that didn't really feel timely for when this came out either. There are some great jokes. I like the puppet animation, but I don't know, it just wore thin by the end. 5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time The Nightmare Before Christmas, which, as we all know, is directed by Tim Burton. That's just... it is. It says there, Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. And, I didn't love it. I mean, the animation is beautiful, but aside from that, there wasn't a whole lot to chew on. It's enjoyable, and I liked the aesthetic of it, but didn't really love it. Not as good as Coraline, for example, also directed by Tim Burton. Directed by Tim Burton. 6.5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Lethal Weapon, and I quite enjoyed it. And wow, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show really takes a lot from this, doesn't it? The buddy cop dynamic between Danny Glover and Mel Gibson is really what makes this as strong as it is, because the story and the action scenes aren't really spectacular, but these two characters are really fun to watch. 7 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Bad Santa, the unrated cut, which is separate from the director's cuts. There are 3 different cuts of this movie for some reason. But this is the one that was on streaming, so I watched this one. And yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I didn't expect this to be as depressing as it was, but that's kind of what made it unique. I kind of wish it went further in that direction, but as it stands, 7 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and I quite enjoyed it. Krampus, which is one of my favorite Christmas movies, I noticed took a lot from this, and I really like the structure of it, how it just has 5 or so comedy scenes, and then in between that, a pretty touching or heartfelt scene that keeps it from feeling cynical. Not all the jokes landed, but I really liked it. 7.5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery. And yeah, it's pretty enjoyable. It's not high art or anything. Don't have a whole lot to say about it. 6.5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Yorgos Lanthimos' Dogtooth. And it's pretty intense going from a bunch of comedies to a movie this downright disturbing. Just a very unpleasant watch. I kind of wish there was a little more to grab onto. I know it's Plato's Cave allegory, but I don't know, what more is there to that? It's still very well made, and it was an absolute galaxy brain move to have the most disturbing sex scene in the movie also be the only one that's unsimulated. That was a pretty bold decision. 7.5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Park Chan-wook's JSA Joint Security Area, and I enjoyed this a lot. Sort of a rocky start, but once I got settled in, I started really loving this. It's pretty cheesy, but in a way that I think really worked for this. 8, maybe even 8.5 out of 10. Then I rewatched Zack Snyder's Justice League. And yeah, it's very good. It's way longer than it needs to be, and there are a lot of decisions that I just find baffling. But it's really enjoyable and just way better than the version we got. I think the fact that there is a much worse version out there that was the only one to watch for a while really helps this movie in getting people to like it. But I don't know, man, it's pretty solid. 7 out of 10. Then I rewatched Seven Samurai because, like I rewatched Zack Snyder's Justice League, Rebel Moon is coming out, and that's very openly inspired by Seven Samurai. Bad idea to watch this right before Rebel Moon, by the way, because that's just Seven Samurai, but obviously not nearly as good. Also, I was like, I haven't seen this in a while, just saw it once about 3 years ago, and honestly it didn't fully click for me. But I'm pleased to say that I get it now. It's incredible. It set the standard for literally every blockbuster ever with its structure. It looks amazing, even though I think the transfer on my Blu-ray looks a bit rough, but it still looks absolutely phenomenal. The black and white looks so great. All the framing feels so purposeful and is always incredibly striking. It often looks like a painting. And there's also a lot of man-ass, so what's not to love? 10 out of 10. Then I watched in cinemas Wonka, and it's fine. This might be a nitpick, but whenever people ate candy, it just looked like people were putting small pieces of plastic in their mouth. I mean, this should be food porn, come on. Despite the costumes and cool looking designs, the way this was shot and lit and color graded just wasn't very interesting. Kind of just looked grey and brown and dull most of the time. Timothy was okay, but this is probably the weakest performance I've seen from him. I heard he was good in this, and I think he was just better than people were expecting based on his wonky lines in the trailer. But it's still pretty enjoyable, and it's just a fun vibe throughout. 6 out of 10. Then I watched Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, and I didn't hate it. It's alright. I'm more excited for the director's cut than I am Part 2, because you could tell a lot got cut out from this, and I think it would have enhanced this a lot. Wears its influences on its sleeves, it blatantly takes the exact same structure of Seven Samurai, and has a scene that is almost a remake of the cantina scene from the original Star Wars. There are plenty of cool action and visuals which you can expect from Zack Snyder, and I loved a lot of the designs and costumes, although some were kind of bland. The score just sounded like every other Junkie XL score. There's some wonky CGI here and there. I think Zack Snyder's vision of what he wanted this to be far exceeded the budget Netflix gave him. But hey, I mean, if you like anamorphic lens distortions, this movie is for you. 5.5 out of 10. Didn't hate it. Then I rewatched Aquaman, and wow, what a stupid movie. It's funny going from Zack Snyder's Justice League, which looks so dark and moody, then going to this, which is bright and hypersaturated. Every flashback scene is kind of terrible for some reason, like those scenes specifically stick out. Amber Heard and Jason Momoa have no chemistry. The action set pieces is really what makes this enjoyable, and it gets better as it goes along, and by the third act, I was thoroughly enjoying myself. 6.5 out of 10. Then I watched Austin Powers' The Spy Who Shagged Me, because I decided might as well go through these movies. And I think I liked it more than the first one. I like that they just shamelessly retconned the love interest from the first one into being a robot. Again, like the first one, not every joke landed, but there were some really standout bits, like the opening credits and the penis pun scenes. 6.5 out of 10. Then I rewatched Die Hard, seeing it for the first time in IMAX. And this movie's great, man. It's ideologically evil, but goddammit, it's just so much fun. It's essentially the perfect action movie. It's gotta be a 10 out of 10. I'm sorry. Then I rewatched Spider-Man, just had it on in the background during Christmas at my grandparents'. I've already seen this movie a bunch of times, I just paid half attention to it. I admit I have a lot of nostalgia for this movie, but I genuinely do think it's really great and way better than a lot of other modern superhero movies. 9 out of 10. Then I rewatched Krampus, which is a movie that I love. It's just so heartfelt and funny, and I love all the designs and the animated scene. It's just a movie that really clicks for me. It's gotta be a 10 out of 10, which I know is weird, but I don't know, it's just my kind of movie. Then I watched Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom in IMAX 3D, and I actually enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was better than the first Aquaman movie. They made fun of how Aquaman 1 has a bunch of conversation is interrupted by explosions. I mean, Aquaman 1 is hindered by a few things that I think this movie is just better at, or just avoids. It's thankfully not as long, and I think this is a better ending than the DCU deserves. 7, maybe even 7.5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Blue Jasmine, which is my first Woody Allen movie. And yes, I know he's a piece of shit. But I really enjoyed this. It presents human relationships in a way that just feels so naturalistic, and just done in a way that felt really unique. I don't know if I was really that big on the ending, but it's really great for the most part. Cate Blanchett is of course incredible. 8.5 out of 10. Then I watched Poor Things in 35mm. And yeah, I really loved it. Despite the subject matter and how weird it is, this movie is still very funny and very accessible, I think. I think it played rather well to most general audiences, who I think will probably go see it around the Oscar season. It's hilarious and really enjoyable, and Emma Stone is incredible. It looks incredible, and it's probably my second favorite, no pun intended, Yorgos Lanthimos movie behind The Lobster. 9 out of 10. Then I watched Austin Powers in Goldmember. I don't love him, but I keep coming back to him. And yeah, it's a bit of a step down from the first two, it has a different feel to it, but I still enjoyed it. The actual Goldmember character himself, the movie doesn't really do anything fun and interesting with. Beyonce looks incredible in this. The second one was raunchier than the first one, and then this is raunchier than the second one. So much so that I'm surprised they even got away with some of these jokes in a PG-13 movie. Also, I can't believe Spectre ripped this movie off. 6 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Rashomon. And I didn't realize The Last Duel is basically a soft remake of this. Obviously, this movie is incredible. I don't think any director knows how to use the 4x3 framing as well as Akira Kurosawa does. I love the way the duel is depicted itself when you finally get to the woodcutter story, which I think is the most truthful one. At least that's how I interpreted it. It's not glamorized at all, it's just two men flailing about and being absolutely terrified, which is probably how it would be. The bit with the baby felt kinda disconnected from the rest of the film. I mean, this is just me, but it would have felt more natural if it was introduced right at the start. That feels like I'm giving a studio note to this movie that is obviously a masterpiece. But hey, that's just me, and maybe it's because I'm used to Western storytelling. But it's still obviously incredible, and I loved it. 9.5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time MacGruber. It's watchable, but I didn't find it very funny overall. That's really all I have to say about it. 4 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Joyland. It examines the role of gender identity and gender roles as related to now in a way that I think is very interesting. It's beautiful, has gorgeous cinematography. It has a surprisingly heartbreaking and harrowing ending. I think I wanted a little more from the main romance though, but it's still really great. 8.5 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Crank, and I really like the style of this, but I just couldn't get how bad the look of this is. I like the look of some early digital movies like Collateral and Sin City, but this just looks like it was shot on a 2012 iPhone. Also, that green screen at the end, awful. It's awful. But I kinda had a great time watching it, so 6 out of 10. Then I watched for the first time Selma. I loved a lot of this, but sometimes felt like I was just watching a cliche safe biopic, when I feel this movie should be anything but safe. It shouldn't feel the need to make the white audience feel good about themselves, and it shouldn't have depicted Lyndon B. Johnson in such an uncritical light. You can tell this movie was made during the Obama administration, I will say that. And I can't help but feel it would be better, or at least more interesting, if it was made now. I mean, that said, this isn't nearly as unsafe and uncritical of people's complicity as a lot of other movies about racism and civil rights. I have this problem with a lot of biopics, but everything just looks kinda too sleek and clean for a 1960s setting. There was a great gag at the end featuring Tim Roth's character, so 7 out of 10. I don't know if it's aged particularly great, but it's still really good. And shortly after watching this, Tom Wilkinson passed away. And yeah, he's really great in this, and great in a bunch of other movies. He was a great talent, rest in peace. Then I watched The Grandmother, which is a short film by David Lynch. So, 7.5 out of 10, I guess. Then I watched Cobweb. I didn't plan this, but it goes pretty well with David Lynch's Grandmother. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it was inspired by that short film. It's a pretty exceptional feature debut, looks great, with subtly creepy vibes throughout. Like many horror movies though, I think this suffers from showing too much of the monster and explaining too much of what's going on. Still, with how well made this is, I'm really excited for what director Samuel Bowden has in store next. 7, maybe 7.5 out of 10. And yeah, that's what I watched in December 2023. Happy New Year 2024. I will try not to watch as many movies this month as I did in December. I know it was a lot, and now this video is really long, but yeah. I think I'm gonna start doing this now so I can, log movies that I've seen and talk about it on my YouTube channel. So yeah, I hope you guys are okay with that change. I don't know how long I'm gonna stick to this. I'm gonna try and do it for the rest of the year at least. It gives me a chance to talk about new movies and old movies. So yeah, I really like doing this. See ya.